Here are 8 receivers running in parallel on the FM band. It's the Airspy, a BladeRF, and then an ELAD FDMS1. That is undersampling, and it has an amplifier in front of it. Then there is a Funcube dongle and 3 rtlsdr with different tuner chips in them. I will now switch in attenuation and make this signal weaker. This is the local FM station. And here we can see the upper 3 are okay, and also the one in the middle in the lower line, that's the SDR-14. The other ones are not well enough screened. They are picking up this station fairly strong, and that makes measurement of interference a little bit uncertain if this station is taken as the reference, because we don't know really how much comes from the cable, how much is picked up by the unit itself. These dongles, they have plastic enclosures and they are not well screened. This is the arrangement. First is a stepped attenuator coming from an antenna. Then a filter for 88 up to 108 MHz. After that, a directional coupler through which I can inject signals into this system. Then there is a 3-port hybrid. I'm using 2 of the ports and the third is terminated in 50 ohms. The 2 ports are going to 2 7-port resistive power splitters. Here is one. And here's the other one. And the unused ports are terminated with 50 ohms. One cable goes to a spectrum analyzer where I can check the signal levels. All ports are connected through a 6 dB attenuator, or attenuators that sum up to 6 dB. And then the radios are connected. Here's the Airspy, here's the BladeRF, that's the ELAD, and here is SDRplay, and here are rtlsdr dongles. I put some copper foil on one of them and that was not enough. And there is a Funcube somewhere. Here is the Funcube, and here is the SDR-14. And down here is one more rtlsdr dongle. That's the one with the R820T. I will do some more efforts to try to minimize pickup into these units, and then see what will come out from this attempt to compare them. First, some wire to make good contact with the SMA connector as well as with the USB screen on the Funcube. Then some aluminium foil around it. So here is the Funcube and one of the RTLs, the other 2, the SDRplay, the BladeRF. Here it was enough to just connect the ground on the input and the output side with some thin wires. One of the RTLs had a problem. I have put it inside a box like this because just wrapping it up with foil caused some interference inside it. And the SDR-14 is well screened. I put an attenuator in front of it because it has an amplifier and I don't want to amplify more than necessary. And the same with the amplifier that is used for the ELAD. I had to rearrange the input side. So first is the attenuator, no longer the directional coupler. This is a 3 dB hybrid that goes from 500 megahertz. It gives 13 dB attenuation on 90 megahertz. So the antenna signal is attenuated by 13 dB, but the interference that comes through this cable here is not attenuated at all. This was necessary to get enough signal to really saturate all the receivers, or most of them at least. Here are now all the 9 radios running simultaneously. And I have set the gain for all of them to produce a similar sound quality. And I can enable a couple of them. You can hear. It's just from loudspeaker to this microphone. So this is the Airspy. And that is the Funcube. It has minimum gain. If I switch off the mixer gain, then it becomes too noisy. To get this function, I have to apply a notch at the center frequency to remove the carrier. I will remove the notch just to demonstrate what happens. It's controlled from the lower right side of the baseband window.
Emilia sa om sina förhoppningar inför det kommande historiska mötet. Vi hörde också.
And then we hear nothing because the center spur is stronger than the FM station. So I have to enable it again.
Storkyrka, det är en världskyrka. Det finns väldigt många olika uppfattningar om de här frågorna. Det är komplicerade frågor. Ofta beskrivs det ju
and there is some noise when there is no modulation, because then all the signal energy disappears in the notch.
När man säger att familjefrågorna är för dagens katolska kyrka, håller du med om det?
That is the FC-0013 dongle.
Det är några som blir reservat, präster och ordens folk, men de allra flesta människor lever inte så.
And that is about the same noise, signal to noise level as in the other ones. And this is the BladeRF.
Ja, det har ju väldigt långtgående konsekvenser.
And this one is after Funcube comes, it's the rtlsdr with the E4000 dongle.
Och det också leder till att man inte kan
and up here is the ELAD.
Den som är skild och omgift kan inte delta i nattvard.
And well, here is the SDR-14.
Det finns ju på sina håll väldigt stora. Jag tror inte att det blir så väldigt stora förändringar, men
And that in the lower right corner is the SDRplay.
tror jag att, och det är ju någonting som finns en klar majoritet.
I will now insert attenuation between the antenna and this system.
Av äktenskap som ingås på premisser som inte är riktiga liksom. Man har ingått äktenskap till exempel därför att det funnits så.
And now it works. There is no leak through of this local FM station in any of the receivers. Here all the 9 radios are running. The signal level can be seen at moments when the voice is quiet. I can try the first one, it's the Airspy. I have them in alphabetical order, so it's upper left. I have an interference at the same level as the signal.
Att tänka att det var du. Men Gud, sluta inte röra på oss.
And you can hear a significant degradation when there is an interference of the same level as the signal. I can switch off that and take another radio. This is the SDRplay.
Kom Gud. Amen. Herren välsigne dig och bevara dig. Herren låter sitt ansikte lysa över dig.
And I can try one more. They are of course expected to be degraded the same way. It's the same FM detector in the same bandwidth in all these receivers. I will tune to the center frequency. Like that, and then have a look at the spectrum analyzer. I'm using this signal generator. It's set to, what is it, minus 38.5 dBm. And then there is a 40 dB attenuator here. The reason is that on the spectrum analyzer I can see nothing. But when I remove that 40 dB of attenuation, we have the signal here, and it is at minus 65 dBm, which means that the signal, when the 40 decibels attenuation is in place, is minus 105 dBm. That's the level of the signal we are listening to. Minus 105 dBm. I have to write that down and remember. The signal is now 500 kilohertz below this FM station. And when looking at the screen, I see no difference when I add or disconnect the signal generator. So I go up a little bit more. It's now minus 31 dBm. Here it's minus 29. And we see 2 of the receivers fail. So at the receiver inputs, the maximum level for, which ones are the first and the second of the RTL dongles? It's the E4000 and the FC0013. They are very similar, and they can tolerate maximum minus 59 dBm. That's what we have here. So I continue. Well, we can listen what it sounds like. I click on one of them.
Till exempel är man ju väldigt noga i skolan. Och kränkning och sådär.
So, of course, this is where something is saturated. Of course, if I go up now, let's say 5 dB from here, that's here, I can now reduce the gain. And that helps. And we still have a reasonable signal to noise ratio. Not as good as before, but we can copy. Up 5 more dB. And now it is not really good copy anymore. And that is in the E4000. And the FC0013 is no longer good either when I have degraded the gain as much as this. You see where the level is for the R820. It's here. Listen to it. I can connect and disconnect the generator. And that has no effect. The level here for the R820T is minus 53 dBm. But here I can reduce the gain, of course, and still hear something. So I bring up the signal level again about 5 dB. We lose information completely. So it's noisy, but maybe copyable. But if I connect and disconnect the generator, it's like this. No difference, so we don't have reciprocal mixing problems. And I make this one quiet and listen to, let's say, the BladeRF. Here we can hear a difference when I connect and disconnect the generator.
Det finns inte kapacitet, ork och tid att ta hand om allt det här som produceras.
Vi kan ju ta det här andra exemplet som jag nämnde här med lärarna och den här dokumentationen kring eleverna som ska läggas ut på systemen. Där kan man ju faktiskt fundera själv som förälder. Hur ofta tittar man på det där egentligen? Intrycket man har ibland på läraren.
So this is the point where the BladeRF fails at 0.5 megahertz. When the signal is outside the baseband filter, which if I go inside the filter, there would be complete saturation. And the level here is minus 43 dBm. Minus 43, and that was the blade. I will continue to bring up the signal level. Off and on. So here the Airspy and the Funcube and the SDRplay are affected, and the ELAD. I have to listen to them one at a time to see where the limits are. it happens to get a spur in the filter, so I shift the frequency a little bit.
Men faktum är ju att det tar, oavsett om man vill eller inte, så de kommer att ta väldigt mycket tid för egentligen alla medborgare som behöver sådana tjänster.
So here gain compression sets a limit, and at the same time we can see a lot of false signals. That means something is saturated. The filter has not very sharp edges on the Airspy. But the level is pretty high now. It's minus 32 dBm. So let's go for the ELAD here. And the mechanism is reciprocal mixing. And it's the same level. And let's see what the...
En annan sak som är ju väldigt stark i vårt samhälle idag, det är ju...
And that's about the same. So that's the SDRplay.
Det är ju starkaste imperativet vi har. Vi kan inte stå stilla, utan vi måste förändra hela tiden. Och det finns ett krav från liksom en beslutsfattare på något vis.
Funcube here.
Skapar ju administrativt arbete. Om det här ska leda, de här förändringar styrningsförsöken ska leda till någon slags åtgärder i organisationen är ju instrument för att genomföra de här sakerna. Så kommer det att leda till automatiskt till mer administrativt arbete. Och där blir ju ett problem att man nästan aldrig tar bort någonting. Utan man lägger...
So I remove the spurs from the passband.
Former, styrmetoder, modeller etc.
Och sen ska alla de här olika avdelningarna inom en organisation ofta debitera varandra, och sen intern debitering. Man fakturerar varandra helt enkelt. Ja.
So it's something like this. Minus 29.
Alltså, man hade infört ett system där man köpte och sålde varor och tjänster av varandra i organisationen.
And then we have the SDR-14.
Till all internfakturering i kommunen under ett år. Och så slog man ut det på genomsnittslönen då och kom fram till att varje faktura kostade någonstans 460 kronor att behandla. Och så tittar man på vad beloppet var fakturorna, och då såg man ett stort antal fakturor. Vilket betyder att man gick i förlust bara från den här internfaktureringen. Så man skapar alltså jobb för sig själv som bara blir resurser till organisationen.
And this is the level where the SDR-14 gets a problem. Minus 23 dBm.
Åtgärd så att säga. Det är en del av det administrativa arbetet att mäta, att dokumentera och lägga fram och bearbeta information. Så att jag tror att New Public Management i sig skapar nästan automatiskt.
The interference signal is now 1 megahertz away, and I will test the level where it starts to degrade on the different receivers. The FM station is a little bit weaker now. It changes slowly with time. There has been some snowing outside.
Vi får lyssna först på annonsen.
Klockan 8 och här är Ekot.
Statsminister Stefan Löfven besökte igår den brasilianska flygplansfabriken André som enligt...
And this is the point where we have compression in the R820 rtlsdr dongle. And the level for that is minus 52 dBm. And I can reduce the gain, of course. And here we start to lose the station. And the level for that is minus 48 dBm. I think the next one is BladeRF. Sorry, BladeRF is here. And this is reciprocal mixing. So it wouldn't help to reduce the gain. And the level for this is minus 34 dBm. And this is the FDM S1. It's very much the same. Which was minus 34. And I can see, of course, now that there are two dongles that are saturated. The other RTL SDR, which one is here. So this is the point where compression starts for the E4000. That is minus 50. And of course I can reduce gain. But not much.
Och nu till vad som kanske är den gladaste nyheten vi har fått den här veckan. Det finns hopp om ett nytt antibiotikum. Eller om vi ska kalla det...
So compression for the FC 0013 starts at minus 48 dBm. But it has a slightly better noise figure. I can reduce gain a little bit.
Ja, jag kände det. Det är ju lite godtyckligt ändå vad som ska få behålla sin latinska början. Antibiotikum skulle bli antibiotika och vad som ska föräras med en svensk början. Så finns det lite korta möjligheter. Jag kommer säga ordet i underlag och nu trycker jag på knappen och ställer den svenska rekommenderade ordanfallet.
So it can give some compression without losing signal to noise ratio. And compression starts about here. That's minus 46. The SDRplay is here.
Centrum. Ja, det är Elvis.
Ja, flera centrum eller flera centrum.
Elvis får poäng. Kranium.
Here we have reciprocal mixing. And the level for that is -29. And if I go here, the Airspy.
Pussar, vad som kusiner tycker jag.
Mediepussar. Nästa är stimulus. Stimula. Är ni överens? Stimuli är det. Även stimuli. Då har vi den sista. Snabbt. Berätta för knappar.
It starts to get reciprocal mixing at this is -21. And the Funcube has spurs. Let's see if I can get rid of those.
Vänta nu, det där lät som någonting annat än vad det var. Alltså jag la bara rabarber. Jag tog rabarber och så placerade jag den på din hylla. Det var en oavsiktlig uttalad metafor som inte var en metafor. Och det är ju, man blir ju glad när man upptäcker en sån här levande metafor. Det är ju inte ofta de uppenbaras. Men vilken vecka det har varit för en levande metaforjägare. Får man bara en levande metafor för hela året så kan man ju skatta sig lycklig. Och bara dagar in på det.
I don't know exactly what the mechanism is, but the level where this happens is -31.
Det blir ingen avblåsning då. Luleå gör mål. Ersbergs känslor svallar och där inte.
And here we have the SDR-14.
Vad var det som hände? Vad gjorde Erik Ersberg? Vi får lyssna. Vad var det som hände egentligen?
Då brast det för Ersberg som kastade en handske på domare Sören Persson.
Han kastade en handske.
About here. And this is -20.
När man ger upp är inte ja.
Man blåser till strid.
Alltså,
Man drar
det är det. Ja, visst. Man sätter igång och den som tar upp den kastade handsken, det är den som tar striden. Själv kan jag säga så menade han att nu
For the SDR-14, this level now is -13 dBm. Here are the results so far. Levels for loss, that's the numbers I've been reading from the spectrum analyzer. The left column is with the initial gain setting, and the right column, that is when gain is reduced until the station is hard to copy. And you have heard and seen that these are not very precise measurements, but they are accurate within a couple of dB or something like that. Dynamic range is 105 minus 105 dBm minus the level for loss of performance. And as you can see, it differs quite a bit between the different receivers. Now the interference signal is 2 megahertz away, and I'm listening to which one? It's this one in the center, which is the E4000 rtlsdr dongle, bringing up the signal level. And we have compression at this point. And this is minus 41 dBm. And I can turn down the gain until the signal becomes difficult to copy. Like this. It's only 5 dB. And I turn it on and off a little. So there is some compression, but one can read this station all the way to this interference level, which is minus 33. The FM station is a little bit weaker now than it was in the beginning. So the degradation is similar here as it was before. I switch that off and go for the FC0013 here. And it gets compressed here and some loss of signal, and it's still minus 33 dBm, but here I can decrease gain a bit. This program is not so suitable. The talking leaves too many gaps, but it just makes this process a little bit slower. About here, minus 32, not very different. The third of the RTL dongles. Oh, I have to switch off that and switch on. And And here is a spur, I will avoid that. And I see I have not the proper volume. Sorry. 37 was the original setting. So compression starts here. Minus 51. This is the R820T. But I can have some less gain about here. But compression comes at the same point. I can read minus 47. And the BladeRF is here.
För det var hans älsklingsplats på jorden.
And here we lose, and this is reciprocal mixing, probably. I will verify that. Yes. So the level for the BladeRF is minus 26. Well, that was a little bit more degradation than. This is more like it. Minus 31 dBm. Oh, I was trying the ELAD, but I see there is a carrier I have to avoid. Something like this. Minus 32 dBm. For the ELAD. Air, well, off and on here.
Vi ägnar hela programmet åt den värsta attacken mot medier i Europa sedan andra världskriget. Om risken för självcensur, publicistisk feghet och Charlie Hebdo.
So here is the point where the Airspy starts to degrade. Minus 21. And I will try to reduce gain. And it can tolerate a little bit more signal. Now it is 20, minus 20 dBm.
Om det inte fanns, det är ju en bön och inget annat. Men jag skulle inte vara någonting om det inte fanns. Nu det så upphetsade med min teori så jag vet fel men teorin i alla fall. Eller
Here about we have a loss of sensitivity in the SDRplay, and this level is minus 33. Well, I will try to reduce gain here.
På de stora frågorna, de existentiella frågorna, de här frågorna som tar lite tid. Varför håller du på med det du håller på med? Vad driver dig och hur ser det ut? Första avsnittet gästas av artisten
jag skulle inte vara
About here, minus 27. And here we have the Funcube.
också jag gjorde precis kopplingen. Men samtidigt, jag tänkte ju inte på religion när jag skrev den låten, men det är klart att den kan tolkas så. Och vad tänkte du på när du skrev den? Ja, och vad är kärlek? Kärlek är...
And this is an intermodulation product with some other FM station that comes in and disturbs. Probably, I cannot say for sure, but this is roughly the level. Somewhere. Minus 34.
I det mycket som man skulle träffa sina morfar och farföräldrar fick man lite förhållningsråd då att tänka på att det inte ska arbeta. Men det var det. Nej, det tycker jag så. Det var alltid lite...
This is probably saturation of the AD converter in the SDR-14. I could put some more attenuation in front of it, but it's really not so important. I don't want to establish the dynamic range of the SDR-14. I mostly have it in this comparison to make sure that I don't have any errors in the test system, that the limitations that can be seen really are from the SDRs and not from my setup, sideband noise from the signal generator or something. By turning a little bit on the frequency, I can get that interference to disappear. And the level here is minus 13 dBm. But the overload light on the SDR-14 is steady in red, so it is overloaded. And certainly some attenuation would make this situation much better.
Så till sist då, Hanna, ni ska själva forska vidare om det här. Vad är det ni ska göra?
Ja, vi ska ju titta då på just gruppen unga vuxna och deras digitala konsumtionsmönster och eventuellt då hur det påverkar överskuldsättning.
And degradation starts at minus 26 dBm.
Har för att just jobba förebyggande.
Hoppas vi att vi får ta del av era resultat när ni är klara.
Absolut.
Tack ska ni ha, Hanna Karlsson och Stefan Larsson, forskare vid Lunds universitet. Plånboken i P1 är det ni lyssnar till och nu är det dags för första delen i vår serie om ekonomiska kriser i Sverige.
And the R820T in rtlsdr starts to get degraded at a level of minus 17 dBm.
Nu ska vi se. Här är också en bild som pappa tagit. Min mor dog ju väldigt tidigt, 1927 då. Där du ser att hon poserar, precis som på Carl Larssons Karin drar fram.
And I cannot really make this hard to copy. This is maximum level on the signal generator. I will see on the if reducing gain improves.
Och här är en unik bild som det är 90 år sedan. Det är jag som är nyfödd och pappa var med.
Which it does not. So the reading on the spectrum analyzer is minus 12. And I guess it will be reasonable to put minus 10 in the table or so. And the SDR-14 is in saturation with the red light glowing strongly. But it's obvious an attenuator would improve because the signal can still be heard. So it's reasonable to put it at something like minus 12 also. Although it's not really the limit for the radio, it's for the way I have set it up here in this experiment.
Blandas in i leken.
Amerika, det var ju liksom något sagoverk. Jag visste bara att det fanns en miljonär där. För min bror och jag lekte ofta.
And the SDRplay starts to become degraded at minus 28 dBm.
Allt vad vi ville ha. Så han gav oss mekan och dockor och allt vad vi önskade.
Men Birgittas fantasier var inte långt ifrån sanning.
And copy becomes difficult at minus 23 dBm about.
amerikaner sitter mer i plånboken än i medel.
Here are the results for the interference placed 2 MHz and 5 MHz below the signal of interest. And we can see at 5 MHz the difference is not very big anymore. At that frequency it is the front end that essentially sets the limit. I have now placed the signal generator 0.5 MHz above the signal of interest. This is going to be different because filters are not symmetrical, and in some cases like rtlsdr, the signal is placed about 0.5 MHz below the center, and now the interference is close to the center, and at 1 MHz it is still well within the passband. Only the Funcube should be symmetric. The other one, and of course also the direct sampling FDM S1 from ELAD and the SDR-14. So I bring up the signal level, looking at the screen where something happens first, and not very surprising, we find it in the RTL dongles, because we are within the passband for those. Looking at the E4000 first.
Hon var en diva, Anita Ekberg. Det säger många som... Och det var inte heller i Sverige.
So this is where it disappears. The signal, and the level here is minus 61. And then I can turn down the gain, of course.
Jag kommer inte på någon sån här dräpande replik nu, men det var väldigt roligt att se att de var lite intresserade av att det var inte som då andra vill
10 dB less gain. I should expect 10 dB more signal. It says minus 51 on the spectrum analyzer. I bring back that, so not forget about it.
Svealand får tidvis snö som under eftermiddagen övergår i regn, och över Norrland sprider sig.
And the FC 0013 is at minus 61 dBm. And here I can reduce gain.
Producent var Ola Henriksson, nu bjuder vi på
pågår alltså just nu i Sveriges Radio P4. Nu sammanfattar vi nyhetsläget genom att berätta att vi följer Sveriges genrep i handboll. Herrarna inleder VM på fredag. Just nu genrepar man borta mot Danmark. Tidigare under eftermiddagen så har vi...
So the limit where it is possible is now minus 51. So these two dongles are very similar, and the performance is given by the AD chip, the RTL 83. Well, I have forgotten the numbers, but the AD chip from Realtek. And here we have the 820.
Radion Historia med Tobias.
tv-programmet om de bortglömda Kanadasvenskarna.
So here is the level minus 54. And I reduced the gain until the signal is difficult.
Publicistisk feghet och Charlie Hebdos framtid.
Du måste ju ha ett parti att publicera. Ja, det måste finnas en
And bring up the interference level. Here. And this is minus 47 dBm. So I am now on the BladeRF.
Vi kommer att höra röster från Paris, inklusive en av de nu mördade satirtecknarna. Vi också höra flera svenska publicister. Vi ska börja på Moderna museet i Stockholm där jag väntar på Lars Pilz, konstnären och konstvetaren som blivit Mr. Rondellkung med hela svenska folket. Och den person i Sverige som lever under det mest direkta dödshotet från religiösa extremister.
The AD converter is saturated, and since the signal is close to the center, the overtones from the low frequency that it presents get into the passband. So the level when this happens is minus 58 dBm. But I can reduce the gain.
Den rör sig runt omkring oss. Jag har svårt att tänka bort dem, men Bilds, han verkar obekymrad. Det är nog en sak, för det är lite ovanligt, för jag är inte vanlig än att det är en personkod. Och det är nästan inte som att hur kommer det att
So about this could be possible. That is minus 51.
Alltså du och jag står här.
Mitt Moderna museet.
Hur många vet om det? Någon kan ju klart ha sett mig, va? Någon kan ha följt efter. Alltså, så kan man ju hålla på, så man vet ju aldrig, va? Men det kommer kanske några inspringande här och vi blir bara två medskjutna, det skulle kunna hända. Men det är inte särskilt sannolikt.
So this is the ELAD FDM S1 and I read minus 39 on the screen.
1960-talet förkroppsligat den franska traditionen av en gränslös och hånande satir av allt och alla i offentligheten. Men man hade nu på sin åldershöst 76 respektive 80 år gamla.
And here is where the copy starts to be difficult. Minus 30.
Je dis oui, on peut encore rire de tout. Så länge man inte sprider hat kan man skratta åt allt. Det gäller bara att ha lite humor, sa den provokative satirtecknaren Cabu och Charlie Hebdo till mig här i morgot. Under redaktionsmötet i onsdags...
And the level where the SDRplay starts to get degraded is minus 28.
Charlie Hebdo befann sig i närheten och kom snabbt på plats.
Är det sant?
And changing the gain is probably not going to help. And that doesn't help. And the level where the signal is difficult is -24.
Censur. I dagsläget vet jag inte. I Frankrike är det i dessa dagar många som har en mening om hur man bäst försvarar yttrandefriheten. Man har även sin syn på hur den internationella...
The Airspy starts to degrade at -38. But here probably a reduced gain is going to help.
Efter attentatet har vi tillfälligtvis förstärkt säkerheten med 2 beväpnade poliser vid entrén, förklarar Antoine Hund och Reportrar utan gränser. Det är att han tar mig upp till den internationella yttrandefrihetsorganisationens kontor. Där intervjuar jag Lucie Mourier, projektledare.
Moi, je trouve que c'est dommage. On a nous-mêmes regardé ça comme ça, appeler à la communication des dessins de ce qu'on
And then it is possible to listen all the way down to -28. Well.
Självcensur svarar hon indirekt på frågan att inte få vara fel i ett så allvarligt läge som detta. Självfallet finns det efter attacken en risk för att journalister och redaktionschefer tillgriper självcensur. Men journalister måste fortsätta våga skriva.
And the Funcube starts to degrade at -28.
Justement, le gros risque de cette attaque ignominieuse, c'est que la peur...
France 3, franska TV3, meddelade oväntat att man under gripande dokumentärfilm karikaturist, cartoonists. Det var inte planerat från början. Filmen har visats under Stockholms filmfestival i höstas samt i Cannesfestivalen 2014. TV-kanaler i ett 10-tal andra länder kommer också att visa filmen.
And that's the SDR-14. Degrades a little here at -25.
Berättar om fantastiska konstnärer, men som alla skapar under ständigt. I många demokratiska länder i Europa har folk liksom blivit apatiska. Det är fint, det går att glömma bort att demokrati är något som man varje dag måste slåss för. Charlie är bättre till undantag, tillägger
At this level, when it's not so easy to copy anymore, the SDR-14 is not yet saturated. And I can read -19 on the spectrum analyzer. Now I have moved the signal generator to 1 megahertz above the signal of interest. And one can expect the RTL dongles to become saturated because the signal is still well within the passband. Here, both the FC0013 and the E4000 dongles saturate, and the level is minus 59 dBm, or rather minus 60 dBm. And then this one is on now. It's the SDR-14. Let's switch off that and listen to the signal.
Som sjunger blott en dag ett ögonblick i sänder under gudstjänsten i Immanuelkyrkan i Thunder Bay. Även om det egentligen sedan länge är engelska och inte svenska som gäller.
So this is where it saturates when there is 10 dB attenuation. And for the FC0013, it's the same. And this should be 10 dB more signal. And I can read minus 51 on the spectrum analyzer.
With the people there, try to get along with people.
The R820T saturates at minus 55. And when I reduce gain until the signal is difficult, it will be better.
Det är också något av ett tema i den bok om svensk-kanadensernas historia som kommer senare nu i år. Det historiska Eleanor Bergen var i Kanada som är ett resultat av många år i Sverige. Det var redan på 1980-talet när Eleanor började om svenskar i Kanada som insåg att det var folkligt historia.
And that's just below the saturation point. And I can read minus 46.
It didn't really start until the Canadian Pacific Railway was built. It was completed in 1886.
Även om det fanns enstaka svenskar i det som idag är Kanada.
It's really questionable to say this level as an acceptable interference level, because as you can see on the spectrum, the AD converter is saturated, and it's just some luck that the station doesn't come on any of the harmonics. But this will become very clear when there are more signals at the same time. Then intermodulation will be horrible here. So I set this level where signal starts to degrade.
Kunde fixa jobb eller anvisa mark åt de som ville bli bönder, och en del svenskar stannade.
It's about here.
I Winnipeg, som kallades för Kanadas svenska.
And I read minus 44. And now it should help to reduce gain.
Strömmen av svenska invandrare anländer hit till Kanada. Jag går nu på Logan Avenue i Winnipeg. Det var den stora svenskgatan under några decennier. Här fanns det svenska kaféer, pensionat och affärer där man inte minst kunde köpa snus. Unga män som kom hit till Kanada. Det är ganska småfattigt område, ingenting.
And this is where reception starts to become very difficult. That is minus 34. here is a spur that I want to avoid.
En plats som hette och ännu heter Scandinavia. Under de följande 50 åren var det kring 100 000 svenskar som flyttade till Kanada. Men det finns inga säkra uppgifter. Bland annat eftersom
The FDM-S1 starts to degrade at minus 35.
från Norrland i början av 1900-talet och drog sig ner till Canadian Pacific-området om dagens
And readability disappears at minus 30. Here it might help to put an attenuator in front of that radio, but it's beyond the scope of what I want to find with this video.
Lived in isolation, and my poor grandmother carried time because there were no neighbors for her. She just work, and no church, no time to do any visiting.
Ja, nybyggarlivet i Kanada var för många svenska emigranter ett ofta ganska hårt liv på isolerade platser med långt till närmsta grann. Och det tärde på även...
And this is where the Airspy starts to degrade. Minus 23. And I reduce gain on the Airspy.
Som då ännu var en brittisk koloni. Och sen vidare till Thunder Bay i västra Ontario. Och den första generationens invandrare fick ta de arbeten och försörjningsmöjligheter som fanns.
It's not a problem. Tried understanding the good now. So after they were burned out in the bush, they moved to another community. We started having trees.
And I cannot get more signal than this, and I can still hear what the voice is saying. The level is minus 13 dBm.
Right from the very beginning. So the Swedish heritage was not as strong as it might have been.
Is that also different with United States?
And here the SDRplay starts to degrade. Minus 29.
There's no Swedish library in Canada. There's no Swedish archives in Canada.
And this sounds like reciprocal mixing. I will verify that by changing the gain. And that doesn't improve. And the level for this is minus 23 dBm.
Men det fanns mer eller mindre rent svenska, eller i alla fall skandinaviskt dominerade bosättningar och områden även i Kanada. Ett sådant var guldgruveområdet kring Red Lake i väglöst land i nordvästra Ontario. Ett av barnen till de svenskar som flyttade till Red Lake på 1920-talet var Sonja Lundström.
The Berglunds and the Hagers and the Strums and the Johnsons and they were all Swedish and it was special for all of us. But then we had waves of immigration. The Germans came after the Second World War. Okay, we had German communities. They stayed. Then they had the Polish people. Then we had the Italians. Then we had the Hungarians. And we had different waves of immigration.
And the Funcube starts to degrade at minus 28. And copy starts to become impossible at minus 24.
När var det här?
1968.
Även i något senare tid har svenskar utvandrat till Kanada. Här hörde vi Bengt Danielsson, ursprungligen från Ludvika, som för 46 år sedan kom till Thunder Bay i Ontario med sin fru Åsa.
Jag förstod inte i engelska heller när vi kom. Jag har bara haft engelska ett år i skolan i Sverige.
Ja, hur gick det då?
Jag fick ha diktionärer med mig. Ja, lexikon, vad kallar det? Men varenda gång jag skulle fråga någon, så tittar man på tv på barnprogram så lärde mig lite mer engelska.
And this level is minus 17, where we start to hear noise in the SDR-14.
Ja.
Så har du ingen längtan hem till Dalarna?
No. And this is the maximum level, minus 13. And it's still not difficult to understand what the voice is saying.
Bengt Danielsson som jag åt lunch med på Skandinaviens förening i Florida. Hon har med två kvarvarande svenska, eller delvis svenska organisationer.
Here are the results for close range performance in the FM band 88 to 108 megahertz. Close range, that means in this context the nearest a couple of channels up to 1 megahertz. We can see here that there are three groups of performance, let's say at 1 megahertz, and if I look at the numbers where reception becomes more or less impossible, there are two very good radios, and that is Airspy and SDR-14, 80 or 90. Then there is BladeRF and the FDM S1, very good. And less good are the rtlsdr dongles. The rtlsdr dongles, at least the E4000, would perform much better if I had been setting it in sensitivity mode. It's now in linearity mode, which means that the interference is expected to be outside the passband, which it is not in this case. So there are other videos I have made that show this effect. I have included them in this table anyway for completeness, and this table shows some indicative numbers. You have to look at the video to see, because the criterion for writing down these numbers is not exactly the same for all the SDRs and not exactly the same on all frequency separations. So it's a subjective test to some extent, but the numbers are real, and maybe a couple of decibels away from what a more careful measurement would have shown. And anyway, this is just the dynamic range measured with one carrier at different separations, and that is not the relevant test for these dongles. It's just a first indication on how they might perform. Real testing will be looking for intermodulation, because that is the likely cause of problems on the FM band in real life. I have moved the signal to 2 megahertz away from the desired. The signal generator is now 2 megahertz up, and I will increase the level until I see something on the screen. Oops. I've seen something in the RTL dongles, all of them. So let's listen to them one at a time.
Som anser att Sverige är ett u-land på att ställa om vårt samhälle så att vi klarar varmare väder och stigande havsnivåer.
Ja, och under året kommer också flera nya rapporter.
And here is compression in the E4000. And the level for that is minus 49. And I can reduce gain.
Tusentals forskarrapporter konstateras att omställningen till
And there is a lot of compression, but that does not destroy readability. It would of course create intermodulation in a later test. But the signal level I can read here is minus 37. And the FC 0013 has a spur that I remove. Many spurs.
Så här sa USAs förre vicepresident Al Gore till exempel.
Within just 6 years, more than 80%.
So this is the point of saturation of the AD, but that doesn't degrade performance really. The level here is minus 49, but I can reduce the gain.
Solcellsmarknaden har ju formligen exploderat under året och inom 6 år så bor alltså mer än 80% av jordens befolkning på platser där soldel lyser ut som eller blir det här. En annan sak att glädja sig åt var ju att jordens största klimatförstörare i USA överenskommelsen att börja minska sin.
So this is the limit, and that is minus 38. Here is where the R820T starts to degrade, minus 49. And I can reduce gain.
Det var lite roligt sagt att man gasar på. Och då får man 520
And about here is where it becomes difficult to copy. That is minus 43.
motorer och batterier i bilarna. Och jag var med tidigare i år på den andra deltävlingen som hölls i Malaysia. Och då såg man de här elbilarna rusa fram i 200 km i timmen och de ser ut som Formel 1-bilar.
And BladeRF has a loss of sensitivity. Here, minus 29. And this is presumably reciprocal mixing, but I will increase the level until copy becomes difficult.
Sen driver en elmotor, alltså
and that's here, minus 22.
Så vi får se hur det ska kunna gå till att få en fossiloberoende fordonsflotta inom 15 år som politikerna lovar.
Here is where the noise starts on the FDM S1, and that is minus 38.
Transportsektorn körs numera på etanol eller biogas eller biodiesel, och det här gör oss faktiskt bäst i EU på det här området. Men det händer saker på andra håll också, i USA till exempel. Det här är inte bara utbildningen av skiftergas och
and copy starts to be difficult at minus 29.
Utmaningar. Bland annat ska hälften av allt drivmedel marinen använder om 6 år vara från alternativa källor, det vill säga inte fossila bränslen. Clearly these are very aggressive goals. Pentagon bedriver däremot
something like this is where the noise floor starts to increase
genom att vara just en
in the SDRplay, and that is minus 30, and I increase the signal level
by about half. Kapten James Goodrow säger att varje gång vi ställer ett nytt byggebaserat ljudfunktion.
And here is where copy is difficult, and we check that it is still reciprocal mixing. Changing the gain doesn't help. And the level is minus 24. Oh, I'm clicking the wrong window.
You know, they are effectively refugees, these guys. These are the survivors of forest loss. So when these companies go in and they chop down 20,000 hectares, and everything gets killed. Everything, even the grasshoppers and the ants get killed.
Ja, det här var en biolog och orangutangforskare som heter Ian Singleton som jag träffade på Sumatra.
This is where the noise floor starts to increase. That is minus 20 dBm for the Airspy.
I mean, here's a typical scenario. Yeah? A plantation company goes in, they get the bulldozers in, they flatten the forest.
And I tried to change the gain setting.
Still standing in the middle of the land, and there's an orangutan up there. And so they'll chop that tree down, and they'll come down, and they'll pile up stubs and stones and machetes and spades and guns and anything like that, and just beat it to death.
And this is the maximum signal level, and it doesn't change much. It's minus 13 dBm. The Funcube is here.
Vargen har sina bytesdjur och vi har våra, säger Thomas diplomatiskt.
Hat sein Beuteschema, ich als Jäger habe mein Beuteschema. Wenn ich das weiß, dass da ist, kann ich mein Beuteschema darauf anpassen. Das muss der Wolf dann nicht tun und damit bin ich zufrieden.
För Thomas Buchholz är vargen, trots de utmaningar den för med sig.
So something like this is where the degradation starts. It is minus 30.
Vilken stor skillnad mot hur många svenska jägare i vargbygd känner inför ulven som ibland skriver deras jakthundar. Vargarna här ska därför nu skjutas med en 270 djur.
And copy starts to become really difficult at something like 24 dBm. Here is minus 22, and then I cannot hear anything. Wideband FM, the degradation comes pretty sharp, so just a few decibels is the difference between a good signal and not copyable.
Av de kommersiella fiskbestånden fiskade till sin maxgräns eller till och med överfiskade.
En lösning kan ju vara att vi äter mer odlad fisk och havsmat än idag. Det är också allt mer.
So this is the point where the SDR-14 goes into the saturation. and that is minus 16 or minus 16 and a half about. But I can give more signal and just change the frequency. So the signal can be copied. If I used an attenuator to avoid saturation, this signal would be reasonably good. And the level now is minus 12 dBm. I have fine-tuned the signal generator to really get the maximum out of it. Now the signal generator is on 100.7. That is 10 megahertz above the signal that the SDRs are tuned to. And let's listen in alphabetical order. Here is the Airspy, and the normal gain setting for that would be minus 16. And I bring up the signal level.
Jag går gatan fram med pappa. Nu slipper alla människor tar vi vår egen rutt kring elden. Hans tunga steg bredvid mina lätta.
Here is compression starting to degrade a little. The level is minus 19 dBm.
Sen säger han ingen mer.
And I will try to reduce gain. That would probably help here. So copy is almost possible, or depending on how well they speak out. The level now is minus 12.
Du måste säga till om det är någon som du känner. Det ska jag göra, pappa. Så vi inte missar
något. This program is not as suitable as previous ones have been, but this is a reasonably accurate measurement. The BladeRF.
Harriet Pram, pappa. Harriet Pram har min vinterdräkt. Du borde försöka.
So degradation starts at minus 23. And the limit for copying is about here at minus 18.
Jag vet inte varför. Advokatdagen var fortepiano. Sägs vara riktigt stiligt hemma hos honom. Nu väntar alla bara på vem han ska ta till fru. Om man bara kunde bestämma sig för Kristin. Så ser jag Jakob. Och bredvid honom ser de.
And degradation starts in the FDM S1 at minus 36.
Vem var det?
And the limit to copy it is about here at minus 25.
tvätt den 16 och 17, klenetter den 18, struvor och berlinerkransar den 19, koka skinka på kvällen.
And the Funcube starts to degrade at minus 29.
Nötter och julkaka den 22. Nej!
And copy becomes impossible at about minus 24. And I don't understand the mechanism yet. Maybe this is now intermodulation with the other FM stations. The rtlsdr with normal gain setting.
Jag håller på att klä på mig, vad vill du? Vänta, jag får inte klä på mig.
So some degradation starts here at minus 24. I will try a lower gain. And that doesn't improve. I look in the spectrum at the signal to noise ratio also, because hearing what the signal to noise level is on this program is not so easy, and I don't want to wait for the next one because it starts to get late and they will stop transmitting after midnight sometime. So this was the E4000 dongle and the level is minus 21. And the FC0013 at normal gain setting. Degradation starts at minus 25. And reducing the gain does not improve. And the limit where copy is no longer possible is at about minus 20. This is the maximum power, but the gain is reduced.
Kan vi inte se bort ett tag? Det är väl alltid han som letar efter mig.
So this receives pretty well, and the level is minus 12 dBm.
Det var bara att gå förresten, nu ska jag väl gå någonstans.
And at the normal gain setting, which is 37,
Vänta, Jakob.
performance is perfect, but the level is a little bit lower, minus 16.
Jag ska försöka. Gå upp då, Jakob. Det är tomt på gatan när jag ger mig iväg. Annars skulle det här vara omöjligt. Vädret är klart. Men kvällen är ändå som en stor skidor. Som att en klockor. Men man får veta vad jag gör nu. Jag kan bara tänka.
The SDR-14 is saturated, but it's possible to hear with it. I take down the value as 13, but it isn't really very meaningful.
Okej, jag hjälper er med. Kanske ett litet halsband. Eller en ring.
Jag skulle vilja sälja.
Ja, då får vi se på det då.
Some increased noise floor in the SDRplay here.
Vill du inte byta det då? Det skulle vara förståndigare.
Nej, jag vill sälja.
Ja, vill ni ha pengar?
And this level is minus 28. And I tried to reduce gain. And that does not help. So the limit where something can be copied is about minus 23. Here are the results at normal frequency variations on the FM band. Maybe surprising is that the very cheap dongles are so good at 5 MHz and above. But that's because at such large separations, performance is determined by the front end, and the front end doesn't differ much between the radios. With an exception of the SDR-14, for which I could reduce the gain and get a little bit better. And also for the FDM S1, less gain would make this performance look better. The real quality of a receiver is, however, not well demonstrated by this set of measurements. There are two more things to look for, and one is the spurs, and I have set up for that now. The other is intermodulation, that is linearity problems, and that will be a separate video because this one is already very long. I have now set the signal generator to minus 60 dBm and 5 MHz below the frequency operation, and I turn the frequency slowly upwards. Looking on the screen for spurs. Here is something in the SDR-14. And this frequency is about 2.5 MHz below. The R820 is disturbed here. This frequency is about, what is it? 1.5 megahertz below. And now the signal is within the window of the ELAD, and it's within the window of the RTL. Here the BladeRF is disturbed. The BladeRF has a lot of close-spaced spurs that probably originate in impurities on the local oscillators. I can change the gain to show that these follow the signal and are not caused by non-linearities. The signal itself is within the passband, and it's 45 decibels above the signal of interest, and it's just near saturating the RTL dongles. So that was not a spur. But here we have the close-spaced spurs of the BladeRF. Let's see. Something in the BladeRF. Sorry? Yes, there was in the BladeRF, but also in the R820. And we have the mirror image coming here in the E4000 and in the FC008, and also in the BladeRF. And the mirror image can be removed by proper calibration of Linrad. And here is some aliasing spur in the FDM S1. And there is something in the SDRplay. The frequency is now 4.5 megahertz above the frequency of interest. I increased the signal level now by 10 dB to minus 50. That is 55 dB above the signal of interest. And turn the frequency from 5 megahertz above to 5 megahertz below. And here the FDM-S1 has a problem. R820, a lot of small signals and one very strong. That comes on the frequency of interest here. And there are many problems with the rtlsdr and the R820 dongle. Here is a spur in the SDR-14 and also in the two other RTL dongles. We can see it in all three of them, a signal that comes on the desired frequency here, and we are now 2.5 megahertz above the signal of interest. And the R820T with the RTL SDR dongle, that has a lot of spurs. I will reduce the gain a little bit to see if that helps, and it seems it does not. I turn back and forth a little. Yes, it became a little bit better. And now the signal enters the E4000 and FC0013 passbands, and they get saturated. And here the BladeRF gets saturated. And it is 500 kilohertz above. You can see the frequency in the ELAD window. And also now in the Airspy window. And now we cross the signal of interest. And there are spurs in all the RTL SDR dongles. Something in the SDR-14 here. And it's hard to look at all the screens at the same time, but you can stop and look in the ones you are interested in, because now this is a video. I bring up another 10 dB to minus 40 dBm. Now 5 megahertz below, and I tune upwards. Frequency is visible in the Airspy now, even though it's in the stop band of the bandpass filter. And it's pretty clear that most problems occur in the 820T dongle. And probably it's overloaded, so I reduce the gain, which doesn't really help much. I cannot control the gain distribution in the R100 in the RTL SDR dongle, but I want to point out that the Airspy, which is so much better, also contains a R820T tuner. It's a 820T2, but most of the difference is probably because of how the programming is done. I'm using the Osmocom library for rtlsdr. And of course, with the signal within the passband, all those are completely saturated. It's now 2.5 megahertz above, and the RTL-SDR, they all have a problem. And here at about 3 megahertz, the RTL SDR dongles are happy at this signal level. Here is a spur in the Airspy at 4 megahertz above. And I increase another 10 dB. Which means that the signal level now is minus 30 dBm. It's a pretty strong signal then. And I tune the frequency downwards across the full range. And just for fun, I will listen to something. Let's say this one.
Och det här var en rapport. Vill du höra Alberte och Jakob igen? Så finns föreställningen tillgänglig 1 månad framöver på Radioteaterns hemsida, som du hittar via sverigesradio.se. Imorgon kväll blir det ytterligare en föreställning från Radioteatern här i P1.
Va? Vad pratar du om? Allan, hörde du inte vad jag sa? Gå ut härifrån. Vad pratar du om, Allan?
Låtsas inte. Du vet vad det här handlar om.
Vad är det med dig? Då var det inte ljuga för mig. Varför skulle jag ljuga?
And as a comparison, I now listen to the Funcube.
Radioteatern ger någons heder. Måndag klockan 19.03 i P1.
Med anledning av attentatet i Paris där 12 personer dödades på satirtidningen Charlie Hebdo tar en diskussion om satiren som motståndskraft. Som gör den så potent. Och hur viktig är den egentligen? Magasinen på onsdag klockan 14 här i P1 eller när du vill i vår app Sveriges Radio Play.
Snart är det slut på nattvågorna i P1.
Den 13 januari börjar vi med dygnet runt-sändningar.
And I switch off the signal generator here.
Det blir underhållning. Fördjupning.
So it causes a problem, but it doesn't cause many spurs. It will be interesting to see the intermodulation performance, but as I said, will be another video.
Så i natt är alltså sista natten som vågorna ljuder här i P1.